Hi, it's Dave here, and this is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile. It's the podcast where we walk home from the movies. Today we are going to the movies, but it's to see an older movie, but it's one that a few people probably have heard of. It's Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, which we saw was playing at Mahon Point Omniplex in Cork. As part of, I think it's their series of Bring It Back. So it's, I think because cinemas are in so much trouble now, and movie theatres, as they say in the US, that they're just throwing old movies in to draw people in, and it's working because we're going.
But it's also it's kind of a low period where like all the summer movies have come and gone. We're not kind of into like the big Beetlejuices and the bigger movies towards the end of the year.
Your big Beetlejuices.
I think it makes sense actually. It's a good idea. I've never seen it in the cinema. I've seen it once with Dave like about 17 years ago, and our kids have never seen it, so we're going to bring them, though they've seen a lot of Star Wars adjacent, like kids cartoony stuff. They've never seen one of the movies.
Yeah, what a weird world we live in, where their entry to Star Wars was through Lego Star Wars, not Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas this was the first Star Wars I ever saw, but I can't say I remember it. And I've seen so many other Star Wars things since that they've all, like, honestly kind of blended together in my mind. So
I do remember your impressions from 17 years ago. And the biggest thing I remember you saying was, I don't get what all the fuss is about. That was your vibe, right? About the whole thing.
But
it was
really
just never
hard
for you, that series, right?
But I just think it's hard if you're watching it as an adult in the noughties or 2010s or whenever it was. It's been parodied so many times, so many things that have derived from it. It's very hard to come at it with any sense of wonder,
and without that childhood
feeling. And it wasn't even in the cinema, so I'm excited to see it in the cinema now, because that changes to me, that always changes how I view a movie. And I'm excited for the kids to see it, like properly sit down and watch one of them, and not just like an episode of Star Wars Lego or one of those other Star Wars shows that are on Disney Plus that I can't even name.
I think what I'm most curious about is, can this movie, which is 57 years old?
It's not.
47 years old.
You're the Star Wars nerd, and I know that's
it's
not
47 years old. Can this movie, which captured the imaginations of generations of children now, 2 or 3 generations, can it do the same to this new generation, to our kids who are 7 and 4, Gen Alpha, I think? Will it have the same impact when they've grown up in a world of instant access to endless entertainment, right? And in a world that, as you've pointed out, is producing material that has been heavily inspired by and derivative of this property, amongst others. So it's like, can this even have any impact on them?
They've got Star Wars toys and everything, so they're doing it all backwards. But I'm a bit concerned for the 4-year-old anyway. I don't think he was ever the target audience, even back in the day. So we'll see how long, in terms of attention spans here. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to see it. And Dave, obviously you've seen it a million times. We don't even need to know how much you love this movie, right?
There is no point in me, a 40-year-old white guy, telling you how I think about Star Wars. That perspective has been well represented. So let's make this about you and the kids. And I'm excited to see it, and a bit nervous. I gotta say.
We're also going to see it in the biggest screen in Cork, which is like the faux IMAX, the Max screen, which is a really good screen. So it'll be good to see how it cleans up.
I will say the thing I'm excited most about is not seeing the movie again. It's that nervous feeling that I think a lot of parents will appreciate when you try to share something you love with your child or children, an interest or a passion of yours, and then that sort of nervousness of and expectation of them instantly rejecting it, which I think we've all been through as children, and some of us as parents. I certainly remember my dad really for years trying to get me into golf, and it just wasn't happening, and I think that ultimately we both disappointed each other.
I think Star Wars is a bit of a safer bet though. Do you know what? I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And you did see it for the first time in the cinema, didn't you?
I did at age 12 in 97 or 13. I saw the special edition. It was my first time seeing any Star Wars. So yeah, let's go. Let's
Exciting.
head in.
20th Century Fox and George Lucas bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Stop that ship! Faster! Chewie, get us out of here!
Oh my, I'd forgotten how much I hate space travel.
Here they come.
They're coming in too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Come with you to Alderaan. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
Okay, hi, we're back. If it's your first time at the Cinemile, you should know there aren't any spoilers, although I think it's hard to spoil this movie. But
think
so
we're
actually,
okay.
let's just go to
I think
spoilers, actually.
Usually we do a section and then we do Spoiler Street, I think, for
I think
classic
let's just say we
spoilers.
probably all know what happens.
Yeah.
So it's the next day. It's not our instant take. We took the kids home. They weren't really interested in talking on a microphone. So we've had a day with it. Kathy, why don't you tell everyone sort of what was your experience of rewatching this movie after nearly 20 years?
Well, firstly, I thought I'd remember some of the film. I have to say I almost remembered none of it. Because I've seen so many of the newer ones, and I think we've done some of them on this podcast, that I'd forgotten the original one I saw. I think it looked brilliant on the big screen. First of all, it looked much better than what I was expecting it to look. I had a ball looking at it. I think it looked so cool. I love the kind of grimy, dusty world of Star Wars. I found it really compelling, actually. I think stuff that I remembered being a bit bored by before with all the droids, I really liked this time, probably because it's on a big screen, which is inherently more interesting, I think, for those kind of scenes. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed it much more than I was expecting. I think, it's a classic for a reason. It really gripped me. There were moments where I was rolling my eyes to the back of my head, like there's this amazing bar scene, right, with like Han Solo and Luke, and they're all in a bar, and it's like super cool. We meet Han Solo for the first time. Obviously he's iconic, and there's so many creatures and characters in this bar, and I was like, God, George Lucas's imagination was incredible. Like, this world feels so lived in, so many cool creatures. It's amazing. Kind of thing that like Guardians of the Galaxy now was like just completely redoing. And then as I watched the whole film, I was like, but he can conceive of this entire galaxy filled with all these creatures, and yet there's nobody in the film who isn't white, and there are only 2 people in the film who aren't male. And it really stands out. Like, it's quite laughable, actually. It's quite laughable and pathetic, really, when you look at it, that he considered himself such a visionary, and yet he never thought a woman could fly a plane, Like, there's a scene where all these men are pilot fighting, and the camera's cutting between them all. I'm like, they all look the same.
Not
like,
a single female pilot.
But not anyone. No one's got a different skin tone. No one's got like.
None of them are aliens either.
They're
They're all human
they're all
in a world
identical.
in a galaxy populated, as you said, with a range of aliens.
I literally couldn't follow the pilot scene. Like, there's a bit towards the end where I was like, I don't know who any of them are. They're all identical looking. It was laughable. That aside, I had a great time.
You don't know Porkins
I just thought
and Wedge Antilles?
that was just so pathetic and made me roll my eyes like to high heavens. But other than that, I had so much fun with it, and I loved going with the kids. Like, it felt like they were really excited because they love that big screen. It felt like an exciting moment for them because they've never seen a Star Wars film. So I just think it's like a lovely family outing, and I do recommend if anyone's looking for something to watch with the kids, and now that all the kind of summer movies have come and gone for kids, which weren't particularly good this year anyway, I definitely recommend it as a family outing. And I was very impressed by our 4.5-year-old. He sat through the whole thing. Granted, had a lot of snacks to keep him going, and at one point towards the end turned to me and said, "What is this movie about?" But he was enjoying the ride, I think. Like, you know, so I think the 7-year-old absorbed it a bit better.
What's interesting is that I could sense the sort of restlessness of both of them at a few points. Like there was a bit of sort of like kicking your legs up and down and sort of scratching, you know, playing with a wrapping paper. I was doing that next week. Like I think the movie didn't have their full attention.
Solid 80%.
Yeah, but I would say, yeah, they certainly they sat there. They didn't complain, but I've seen them more engrossed in other things. So
Harold
I think
and the Purple Crayon knocked this out of the park.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Yeah. But that's for their age group. Like, this is a film for families and adults. So,
I think that what's interesting is that a day has passed, and coming out of the movie, the instant vibe was, you know, I thought during it that they didn't seem 100% engaged in it, and afterwards, you know, we were asking them the usual questions. Who did you like? Who was your favourite character? What was your favourite bit? And they couldn't really, recall any of it almost, or there was nothing that connected. But, so I thought, okay, my suspicion was correct that, you know, this movie just, either they're a little too young, or this movie just doesn't have the sort of impact on a generation growing up in an entirely different entertainment landscape. But I gotta say, then as the day went on, little things started to emerge, like things that had stuck with them. Weirdly, Darth Vader choking somebody seems to have left a big impact, because they started trying to do it to us. I don't know what that says about our children, but our youngest Elliot started just trying to choke us over dinner with his mind. Yeah. And then we played along, so it was kind of, you know, it was good.
Kind of fun. I mean, they know Darth Vader as well, like. But it's funny actually. Before, and then you should talk about this from a way more informed position. My only other takeaway from the film was, I was surprised that Darth Vader wasn't like particularly bad guy. Like,
wait, do you mean that he wasn't more of a prominent position in the hierarchy? I think that's what you were trying to say,
he
right?
just kind of felt like a side character. I was really surprised. Like, I thought it was like Darth Vader was like the big bad guy, and I can't really remember the next two movies, so I'm sure he gets built up more. But he was barely in this film, and when he was there, aside from that one time using the Force on that guy to choke him a bit when he didn't even kill him, it just didn't seem that bad. And then his battle with Obi-Wan was like really boring and anticlimactic.
That's famously boring. So that's the worst lightsaber fight in the whole thing.
It's not, in my head, Darth Vader is a much bigger figure, and I know he is in popular culture. In this film, he wasn't particularly interesting.
Well, I would say that yes, he naturally becomes more prominent in the episode Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, because Luke's plot hinges around him, famously for a reason I won't spoil.
A reason
that no one knows about.
For me, from watching The Simpsons as a child.
I know, right? But I think to your second point, you kind of to a second point, and you mentioned it there, the impact of Darth Vader in the cultural landscape, I think, is testament to how he managed to do that with such little screen time in the first one. Like, he is an instant ominous and villainous presence from the minute he steps onto that spaceship at the very beginning, and the music changes, and his design, James Earl Jones's voice, you know, the presence of Darth Prowse in that suit. I think it all lends itself to just a classic looking villain whose cultural impact outweighs what he actually does in this movie, which is what you're referring to, that, you know, you're surprised at how little kind of he contributes in a way, right? And
he's kind of a minion to the Emperor. Again, I didn't remember that. I thought Darth Vader was like the big bad.
He's the big bad's lackey. He's the right-hand man, yeah.
I just, that's not really clear in like culture. I wouldn't have remembered that.
Yeah.
But I do think that like his, you know, the breathing and all that is so cool and iconic. And like the stormtroopers, like the costumes of the stormtroopers, so good.
Yeah, and going in, I mean, we didn't say this before going in, but our kids have They knew Darth Vader, they knew stormtroopers, they knew Baby Yoda, which speaks a lot to the Mandalorian. Not Yoda, Baby Yoda.
Yeah, and they've not even seen the Mandalorian.
No, because the toys are everywhere and the the figures are everywhere, and those looks are so iconic and well represented in our cultural landscape. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I gotta say, I got quite emotional watching this movie several times. I don't know why. I haven't seen it in quite a while. I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 10 years even. I think I bought the Blu-rays of the 6 movies back when they were called the complete saga, which became redundant. So it was definitely pre-2015. But I've seen this, I don't know, 100 times. So but I don't know, it hit differently. Many times. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm having a midlife crisis. But it
I mean, there was a lot of men in around your age in the audience.
Yeah, I just got Luke looking over the sunsets and the that beautiful music that John Williams composed, Rising. It's just really.
Oh, the boys were singing the music as well later. Like, the music's so good.
Oh, the music's incredible. So
did you notice that Luke could not give 2 shits when his aunt and uncle were killed, but was like devastated when Obi-Wan disappeared into the forest? It's like, Obi-Wan's not even dead. He's talking to you. Your aunt and uncle have been brutally turned to skeletons, and you don't care because you just wanted to leave the farm anyway.
Well, I think he does care. I think he was trying to keep it together in that moment.
Was he?
And he was being resigned to the maybe he had an intense display of grief on the speeder ride back to Obi-Wan and the droids. That's where it happened.
It's so weird having seen like all the other movies and the whole franchise, watching it, because it's almost like you're seeing the future when you're sitting in this movie. Because I was putting myself back into like seeing this for the first time at the cinema and all that, and like it is farcical that what ends up happening with Leia and Luke and Darth Vader and all the familial connections, because like there's no way that was plotted out in this film. Like, this film ends on a love triangle.
It's a love triangle, yeah, for sure.
By the way, Luke hadn't a hope of winning, whether or not he ended up being related to her or not. Like, nobody could go up against a young Harrison Ford winking at you.
So charming in this movie.
So charming, yeah. So yeah, I think that stuff is all farcical now to look back on it as what it was and what it became. I do remember, as I know we've reviewed other movies on this podcast of like the prequels. Remember, they all came back. Luke and Carrie and
yeah, you're talking about the sequel movies. Yeah, 7, 8, and 9. 7 was before we started podcasting. 8 I did by myself drunkenly and angrily, and 9 you and me did, and you said it was the best Star Wars film you've ever seen.
I don't remember.
Widely regarded as the worst.
And then over on our Patreon, you've reviewed all the TV shows, haven't you? Like The Mandalorian, The Acolyte.
Yeah, we've spoken about all them.
Obi-Wan.
Joe Kiley's been on. Owen Duggan.
We've done a whole load of Star Wars on this podcast, so it's lovely to come back and actually watch the original.
I gotta say, it's a very pure.
It's really
film.
sweet. Yeah.
It's works really well, I think, as a family film. It's incredible, really. Another thing I really appreciated watching it back this time was having just recently watched the Light and Magic documentary on Disney Plus about the formation of Industrial Light and Magic, the special effects studio that George Lucas created for this movie when he realized that no existing visual effects house could do the stuff he needed to do. And that is whatever about George Lucas, and he's been dragged through the mud for his terrible dialogue and the prequels and all these things. He is watching that. He is undoubtedly one of the greatest entrepreneurs and business-minded individuals. He just by that one decision, he like willed Star Wars into existence, his vision, just through pure force, pun not intended, force of will, created like, and it basically created a powerhouse visual effects studio just to get what he needed done. Brought all these incredible people and minds together who'd never done any of it before.
I presume you mean he brought a group of white men together.
A group of the most exceptional white men.
I mean, I think like
doing jobs women couldn't possibly imagine.
But when I was saying to Dave, like, you know, there's so much racism in the fandom now of this franchise, and even on the Acolyte, there's been such a horrible backlash against the female lead.
It's really disgusting.
And you reap what you sow. Like, honestly, looking at this film is inherently racist and sexist by how it's presented to us. And that's the foundation of this entire franchise, and like, you have to accept that.
What's sad to me is, one, that there is that the culture wars have grasped onto Star Wars, and there's such a very vocal element of this fan base who is, I think, destroying the reputation of its fan base.
I do think they're a vocal minority. I
do think they are also a minority. But the problem is, one, they are the loudest voices right now. Two, they are being listened to by the studios. And I'm not going to regurgitate it all, but a lot of the decisions that we saw on screen in J.J. Abrams' The Rise of Skywalker, Episode 9, were clearly a direct response to the loud vitriol of a minority, where we're seeing actors and actresses harassed and bullied in public spaces, which is unforgivable. I don't think the studio has done enough or anything at all to help them or back them up. So this is where they have fallen down, Disney and Lucasfilm. Great, you have diversified your casting, but I don't think you're doing enough to protect these people, and we're seeing the same with The Acolyte. And what's upsetting to me as well is that The Acolyte was cancelled, and those people, those minority, the voices, are taking this as a victory, and they are and they're using it to throw in the face of the cast as some sort of acknowledgement that their toxic online abuse has succeeded. This campaign has succeeded.
It's unfortunate that two things have happened whereby it's been diversified, which is positive, but also the quality has gone down considerably.
This is my point. Yeah. My point is that I'm here saying The Acolyte is a terrible show. It's very bad. It's not. And its faults are directly related to characterization, writing, plotting, pacing, editing, like the actual structural issues of a show, that television show that is unforgivably subpar, if you ask me. And what's happening is that those criticisms aren't being taken. I think what's happening is that people are now the consensus is that, it was cancelled because of reactionary racism. And I hope, and the other problem is that was a show that was finally getting away from a thing that has anchored Star Wars as a modern property to the Skywalkers and tying everything back, and this incessant problem of nostalgia baiting, and this show finally was clear of all that, and said it 100 years before any of that, was a brand new story, and that is what I want, and that is what I applauded. It was a bad story, but they tried it, and my fear is that this reactionary studio is just going to go right back to where it's safe.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. But I do think, all that aside, George Lucas started all those problems. He did. They were on the biggest screen in Cork for us to look at yesterday. Admit it. Why won't you admit it?
Because I don't.
He presented a monolithically male and white world as the foundation of this franchise.
But the franchise has adapted, the fans should as well. Our times have adapted. We've changed for the better.
I agree with all that, but I'm saying he started the problem, though. I don't know why you won't admit it.
I'll admit that yeah, there is clearly no representation in this franchise in its earlier forms. Yeah. I'll agree with that. And and you can blame George Lucas for that. But what I'm saying is that he is a product of his time.
Well,
you can blame any 70-something and 80-something-year-old person for being out of touch.
Everyone's a product of their time, and he was neither 70 nor 80 when he made this film.
Sure.
I genuinely don't know why you would in any way try and defend him. Anyway,
Anyway,
we
look,
did have a great day.
I just hate
out.
that. I think this is what I enjoyed about our experience that now
It was
feels
pure.
tarnished. It just felt pure and innocent
But
and
it
back
has
to
to be
what.
tarnished. They've made.
I know.
There must be 40 iterations of this between films and TV shows.
And this is the sad thing, and I think this is why I've kind of just like many people, I think, have just fallen out of love with this thing, not just because of the sort of whole, it's all been tainted by a toxic fan base, but because I just don't feel like they're producing anything that's of interest to me, that's new or interesting or imaginative, besides Andor, which is one of the best TV shows around.
Well, look, anyone can go to our Patreon and hear your extensive reviews of the Star Wars shows. I just think what George Lucas should have done is sell all the merch you want, sell all the like theme park rides you want. Don't actually sell on the creative rights. Don't go off and make 1, 2, and 3. You had a pure trilogy that everyone loved. 1, 2, and 3. That's what I'm saying. He shouldn't have done that, and then he shouldn't have sold off the rights for anyone in the planet to make a TV show of it. And just be there, be pure in what you made, and then just go on and do other stuff. Like it's actually like there's an alternative parallel universe out there somewhere where they just made 4, 5, and 6. They went down in history as being iconic, and George Lucas fucked off and did something else. Then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's
but
ruined
isn't
it all.
But isn't there also an argument for like that's kind of gatekeeping, right? Isn't there an argument for like
It's a franchise.
allowing other creative voices to come in and try things?
But he's made all these incredible industrial light and magic and effects, and just nurture people to write their own scripts and make their own films.
Well,
it's the opposite of gatekeeping. This
I
is
agree with that.
gatekeeping because everything links back to Lucas World and
I
giving
know.
him profits for this tarnished franchise.
I'm not going to argue with that. Some new things would be nice. How about we get the next George Lucas? How about we give someone else a try? Like, how about we give another vision a try? So
Because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and all them were the biggest gatekeepers, and there's this whole subculture around them in the 70s where they were monolithic in what they created, and they didn't support diverse voices, and they just kind of sucked in all of Hollywood and got to make whatever they wanted, and that's the kind of opposing view of it, which I take. So I don't want to hear from the next George Lucas.
This episode's turned very negative.
I don't want to hear from the next George Lucas. I don't care about the next George Lucas. I hate George Lucas, actually, if anyone hasn't noticed.
Wow, yeah, this is really coming out.
But I did enjoy
I admire him.
A family trip out to episode 4. Thumbs up.
It was great, and let's bring it back to that. Let's finish on a high note.
Now let's bring our
the
kids
four
in
of
for it.
us sat in there watching a 47-year-old movie that I think it, for the most part, engaged all of us. We came out happy, and then our children force choked us at dinner, and they said, "May the force be with you." At
They
bedtime.
did say that. Yeah, that was quite fun.
Yeah.
And now we're going to make them watch all of The Acolyte because I think they'd really enjoy it.
Oh God, no! Nobody should watch that. Anyway, listen. Thanks for listening. I'm not going to say email us with your opinions of Star Wars because that's it's just let's not talk about this anymore. Let's let Star Wars lie for a while. Let's move on to something else. But we are always willing to chat to you guys about anything else. The Cinemile at gmail.com, or we're at the Cinemile on Letterboxd and YouTube and Instagram. And we still have some tickets for our live show available, which is next week, Sunday, the 15th of September at Cork Podcast Festival in the Cork Opera House. We'd love to see you there. We're going to be chatting to the audience.
We would love to see you there, and we will be reviewing Beetlejuice.
You don't need to have seen it before. We won't spoil it. And we're going to be taking a look back at some other best and worst legacy sequels. So come armed with what your favourite and least favourite Lega sequels are, and then we can all bemoan this subject of the death of inventiveness and the constant regurgitation of old IP together. It'll be like group therapy.
It will be, yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making. The Force will be with you, always.